Hi, everyone, and welcome to the DVM Project's career interview of the month. I am really excited because I am joined by two fellow Canadians. We don't often have Canadians on this show, strangely. So yeah, we're here in Canada. We're not freezing our buns off. It's actually, I don't know about you guys. We'll talk about the weather, of course, because as Canadians, we love to complain about weather. So it's a national pastime. But I'm joined by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Leicht. Now, they both have really interesting career discussions, and I've actually never done a duo interview as well. So this is very exciting. So thank you guys for joining us. If you're joining us live from Facebook or if you're joining us live in the group, do get your questions in. Feel free to ask them, and I'll be monitoring Facebook, and then we'll be checking in. So don't be shy. We're here for you. You can also send a DM, and we'll be happy to answer them. So I'm going to jump right in. Thank you guys for being here and joining us on Saturday night, and particularly because it doesn't affect us as much, but it is American Thanksgiving as well. So thank you very much for being here. And if you want to just, maybe I'll start with Michael. Do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, as you said, my name is Mike. I am in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, which is kind of the middle of Canada, off to the west. We'll probably dive into the career path. I grew up on a mixed animal farm, beef cattle. I was going to be a mixed animal beef cattle vet when I went through vet school. And none of that really played out. After about a year and a half, I was off doing small animal. And then about 2 years ago, July 2018, I've actually stopped clinical practice and now doing the podcast thing with Jonathan and looking at other sort of business opportunities in the vet world.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. What about you, Jonathan?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jonathan. I am from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I am joined with that other gentleman on the Veterinary Project podcast. We've got a little podcast going on the side, which we have for the last 6 months. I am a 2009 grad from the WCVM, and I always joke that I am now on to career number 4 in the last 11 years. So I started off in small animal emergency at a hybrid practice, a large practice here in Calgary, and then moved into the pharma world a couple of years later and did sales for a couple of years before transitioning into the States. My wife and I, before we had our first baby, we went down to the States for a couple of years with a company called Novartis that doesn't exist anymore. And then we came back. Another third career was in operations with a company called ABC that turned into VCA Canada. And I worked with them for the last 5 years before transitioning out of that role in the last year and moving on to some entrepreneurial ventures. So I am in the middle of working with another mixed animal group called Mosaic Veterinary Partners. And I work with them in an operations role, as well as start my own clinic, podcast, a couple other things as well. So it's been a fun route. It's been a fun road so far.
Nice. So there's going to be a lot of things we can dive into here. So I guess let's talk about when you've made these transitions, because this is where we get the most questions at the DVM Project is talk about the, what is it, how did you make the decisions to make a shift? What did it feel like? How did you know it was the right choice? That kind of thing. So maybe, Jonathan, you've got 4 to cover. So
Yeah, so if you talk to anybody I know of, friends, etc., you get that itch around that 4.5 years. We've talked about that on our own podcast. For me, that's where I start looking outside of what I'm doing currently and going, okay, in what way is this fulfilling and not? For me in transitions, whether it was from practice into sales, that was a really hard one because it was only a couple of years out of school where everybody in the world thinks, hey, you're supposed to be a day-to-day vet. How come you're thinking of something different? I literally will write down my pros and cons. I'll chat about it with my wife. We'll spend time thinking about it. And at the end of the day, on all of these transitions, I have had no idea whether they're going to be successful or not. But in doing the pros and cons, weighing out the opportunity, you come to a decision, you take it, and you roll with it. And once you've made that decision, there's no looking back. And that's really exciting. And it continues to happen on I would call it monthly or semi-annually basis.
Nice. Yeah, I like the idea of a pro-cons list. Yeah, I think it's a nice way it's certainly a nice way to start, isn't it? And you kind of get an idea of how you're reacting to stuff.
And it takes the emotions out of it for me as well, too. Then I get a rational visual approach to seeing what I'm actually contemplating. For me, that actually helps calm my mind down to thinking about all the opportunities, but also all the setback possibilities. It takes those out of there. So I really like that.
Nice. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, for me, my approach has been more of, I'm a really big proponent of like vision planning, design, like outlining what you want your life to look like writing it all out, and then making your decisions based around, will it take you closer to that vision or move you further away? And so when I faced sort of big transitions in my life, I'll go back to that vision and sort of where I want my life to be, and then figure out, okay, is what I'm doing right now serving me, or do I need to make like a course correction to get closer to it? And the biggest transition, or what's that, Jody?
Oh, I'm waving at Greg. I saw Greg came on here. He's on.
Oh.
Hey, Greg, I'm going to put you on, I'm going to get you to stop. I'm going to stop your video.
And when I made my biggest transition, which would have been stopping clinical practice, to be honest, that one also had a component of just straight up desperation in it, right? I knew like what I was doing on a day-to-day basis was not taking me closer to my ideal life, my ideal day. And so that kind of forced me to make some decisions. And then I really like what Jonathan said was, make the decision and then go with it, right? Don't hang out in that limbo land of being like, oh, did I make the right decision, and going back and forth? Because I find people get stuck there. So once you make a decision, make it boldly, go with it. No decision's permanent. You can always go back and do something different or course correct. So that would kind of be my my process.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people think too, like, oh, if I leave clinical practice, I'm never going to be able to go back. But it's just not true. Like, there are so many people who go in and pop in and pop out and do lots of different things. And it really is, it's not a door closing. It's not a one-way scenario.
I haven't told any of the clients that I've worked with since October of 2019, but in 1920 here, that's the first time I've done surgery since 2016, because in a locum capacity, rare was I in a surgical capacity. And since coming back, that's 4 years of non-surgical time. You can get back onto the horse there again. You reach out to people that you trust and can get some guidance from, and it's very, very possible. I am the epitome of that example.
Yeah, I just find it amazing how you don't how your muscles and your even your dexterity, you just don't forget those kind of things, which is kind of neat. I remember one of the first years after I left clinical practice, I don't think I'd injected a set of hocks on a horse for a long time, and we had a cadaver lab that we put on for the students at the laboratory, and we were there, and I was like, oh goodness, this horse is upside down, it's dead. I'm not sure how this is going to go. Teaching these guys how to inject a hock. I was like, oh. Like, if I can still hit a joint on a dead horse upside down, I'm sure I'll be okay to go back to practice. And it's true, like even 3 or 4 years later, I still do neck injections and back injections sometimes for friends and colleagues. And it's amazing that you just don't forget how to do that stuff.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, good. So one of the other things that comes up for a lot of our audience is, it always sounds so easy when people make these decisions to leave clinical practice or to do different things. But oftentimes there are challenges and, second thoughts and, uncertainties or just in general challenges. So would you guys feel comfortable sharing how you overcame any of the challenges that might have come up for you in making career transitions or making moves in your career?
Go for it, Mike.
Okay. So top of mind, I'll rattle off a few and we can deep dive them if we want. I would say number one is support. So surrounding yourself with a whole support network. Probably that's going to start like with your family, with your spouse, and then work its way out. So I know for me, obviously Rosalie, my partner, was very supportive. I joined Mastermind Groups. I had a personal coach. So I had a lot of support surrounding me, because I think, for me anyway, and I see this theme with others, is it'll be some sort of hold up and it'll be some sort of fear, but often the fear's not even really real. Jonathan made a great point a while back, a few months ago, fear versus danger, right? And fear is often just the conversations largely that are in your head that aren't even real. And so having that support network around you, to bounce that off and get through that, So that would be probably kind of my biggest thing that comes to mind.
Love it. I'd add to that, challenging wise, when I first stepped out of practice, and this is a few years back in terms of full-time practice, a challenge of mine was my own family. So I don't even know if we've spoken about that in a podcast a lot about it on ours, is that, my parents and especially my mom had expectation. Hey, he's going to be a day-to-day vet. They've seen me in practice. I'm in an emergency setting. It's a busy. Why would you leave that? I remember my family and me sitting down when I said, hey, I'm going into full-time sales as a territory manager. And my mom's like, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you talking about? You just finished school and you've been out 2 years and you're all of a sudden doing that. And it was through, as Mike said, exactly the support of my wife at that time. And also, I think having that confidence in yourself. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, shucks, I've got to go back to full-time practice. We're so lucky that if the whole world falls, under us or out of us, we can go back into practice. And we know for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a need. So why wouldn't we jump out there? And then from that standpoint, going into sales, I had a lot of feedback from colleagues that just didn't understand. You're going into a territory role. You're not going into a technical vet role. How could you do that? Isn't that demeaning to yourself? No. Like, let's look at the long plan here. What are you in for? Like Mike said, what's the vision? And if people don't understand that, who cares? It's not for them to understand. It's for me, my spouse, my supporters. If they don't get it, I don't care.
Now, this is a really interesting conversation because it's very easy to say that, like, who cares? I don't care. Yes. Much harder to do it because I had that same thing. You tell people, okay, I'm done clinical practice, and they look at you kind of squirrely eyed and they're like, what are you doing? You went to school for all those years and you've taken all this CE and you're just going to stop, and they kind of think you're crazy. And that is a huge hurdle. And you touched on confidence there, Jonathan. Yeah. Having the confidence in yourself to trust your decision. And a piece of it too is identity. I think a lot of veterinarians will get, very attached to, I'm a veterinarian that does X, Y, Z, and that's who I am, and it's like, you have to shift that. That's a part of who you are. Absolutely. But that's not all you are, and getting comfortable with shifting that.
I don't think, Melanie, if you're, and I'll put this out on the spot for Mike, I don't think you could ask a better individual who has walked away from practice, being in Mike, has had a whole different successful profession on the real estate side and looking at investments, et cetera, and had to deal with that. It has been amazing how he has handled that. And at the same time, grown as a person. So I give him huge kudos for that, because the person that Mike is in 2020 is not the same guy he was in 2017. And that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's great. And I think
I'll make you blush all day.
I love that. I also think, so truthfully, Mike, you left not only clinical practice, but you really sort of left like what a lot of people would say, left the profession. Like, you didn't need to, invest in real estate and build up a company the way that you had to have, you didn't need a veterinary degree to do that. But tell me how that's, like, how your skills as a clinical veterinarian or skills you learned in school have transferred into the other pursuits that you guys have done.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel my personal opinion is probably the number one skill we learn as veterinarians through our training is critical thinking and problem solving. And that that transfers over. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If it happens to be a medical case or a surgical case or just a life problem, the ability to think critically, and navigate problems, that's what we do. So it serves you for everything, no matter what you want to do. Man, it could be relationship stuff. It could be business stuff, anything. It's just such a good skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Jonathan?
Oh, I think he's nailed it right there. Again, I know how to learn. I have always admitted I am not the smartest guy in the class, but I know how to learn. You put something in front of me and I will find a way to learn it. And that's important. And especially with all of these different careers that are possible in the veterinary industry, they all feed on each other. So sales allowed me to learn from an amazing individual. When we went down to the States, I got mentored by a fantastic business person. Come back to Canada, build relationships, get mentored again in a whole different facet, but they built on each other to the point where then you get that confidence to go out on your own because you've built that skills, that base, again, knowledge and understanding and confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And building that kind of portfolio is so great. It's so great because it's never nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take skills away from you. Nobody can say, you know, oh, that's not a benefit I'm going to give you anymore or anything like that. It just benefits you as a person in general. Makes you better at all sorts of different things. Like, you know, it might even make you a better practitioner. I often thought, you know, after I left clinical practice and joined the laboratory at the University of Guelph, I thought, holy crap, after the first 2 days, I was like, after I toured the lab the first thing that they do when they hire somebody new is they make you unpack boxes from veterinarians. And I realized I was like, oh, I think I would have been on the naughty list at the lab. So I've learned so much already. So interesting. I interrupted you, Mike.
No, I just wanted to add one thing to what Jonathan was saying. There's a bit of a discrepancy, or at least I felt it, going through vet school on your journey to become a veterinarian is very linear. Like, it's get into vet school, pass year 1, pass year 2, pass year 3, etc. Whereas real life is 360 degrees. You can go in all directions. You can go and grab a skill from over here, come back, grab another skill from over there. And it's like building a puzzle, and they all come together. And I don't know, I was very guilty of this. It's funny having me and Jonathan, because we're opposites. Going through vet school, I was very narrow focused. I was going to be a clinical mixed animal veterinarian. Jonathan went and experienced everything. And I mean, learn from me, do what Jonathan did, because grabbing all those skills, you can bring them together, and it just complements whatever you want to do in the profession.
Yeah, I think that's really, really true. And I was listening to an interview the other day from another vet in the UK, and she was talking about, you know, now that she's transitioned out of clinical practice, but she's actually really, she's loving the fact that she can bring in skills that she developed as a teenager, like organizing dog shows and stuff, into the work that she's doing now, which has nothing to do with dog shows, but has everything to do with organizing people. Because it's so interesting, because you just never know when a skill that you've developed, or a volunteer opportunity that you've put in time to, you never know when that's going to leverage yourself into something different.
I throw that at you, Melanie. I'm jealous of your project management skills, and watching you navigate through the Global Summit last year, that I was going, how has she done this? It was so impressive. And I can see so many ways that I could use your skills in veterinary practice, in leadership, and in what we're doing as a business. Like, that impresses me. And that directly.
Now you're making me blush, Jonathan.
It's true.
He's pouring it on tonight. He's pouring it on.
Told you, we're turned on tonight. We're going to make this work. Yep. But it's true. Well, I want to learn that.
You just never know when a skill is going to come in handy, right? I guess I also always think, if someone will pay for a credential for you to do, like if they're going to pay for training for you to do, then why not do it, even if you think it's horrible and boring. Like a few years ago, I did training to do SQL coding, which is not my jam, but I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And because my work needed me to do it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to learn this. And it was interesting. And although it's still not my great love of my life, it's an interesting skill that I have, and I have no idea when I'm going to use it again, but you just never know.
That's it. Yep.
So if you guys have doled out some really amazing advice and shared some really good insights. So what advice would you give to somebody who isn't sure what their next step in veterinary medicine might be?
Give her, Johnny.
Go explore. I think people are too close-minded in this industry. I think it's both as a facet of our education, the personalities that we're choosing in the veterinary industry. And I think relationships have a manner of making you go places and getting you places that you can never even expect. So don't be afraid to go talk to somebody. I think that if you have any questions, etc., reach out to people that may be doing it, because that's going to afford you the opportunity to see what it's like on that other side that you might be contemplating. And maybe it's then a way that you want to go or not. I think too many people are scared. And as a result of that, I think they're hurting their own lives in the long run.
Right. What about you, Mike?
I just want to echo the relationship piece, because the relationships is everything. It's so important. What I would say, if you're not sure where to go, you don't need to know exactly where you're headed. You just need to know roughly the general direction. So kind of going back to what we started with, if you have your vision, if you know your core values, use those as your sort of parameters to make decisions with. And as long as you're making decisions aligned to those things, make a decision, move forward. It doesn't need to take you to your final like end destination in one step. It just needs to be one step towards it, you know. And it's like having the confidence or faith to take that step, know you're going to land on solid ground. That is going to open up doors that you weren't even aware of before and allow you to take your next step, you know. So it's kind of that, like, make a decision and get moving. Don't get stuck in that like paralysis zone.
So what do you do after, Michael, once you've made that step and you maybe had a little failure? What do you do after that and you've gone backwards?
Yeah. So this is a really deep conversation too, because the fear of failure, especially for veterinarians, like paralyzes us, right? Like seeing red ink on the top corner of a test is devastating to us. So everyone thinks failure is bad. And this is part of when Johnny talks about Mike 2017 versus now. I hated failure. Now I love it because it's like, okay, that way didn't work. That wasn't right. Excellent. We've closed it off. Now we know not to go there and we can go a different direction. So, I mean, if you fail, learn something from it, right? So as long as you learn something from it, it's not a failure. Course correct, and away you go again, right? And then it's the confidence in yourself to not sit on that failure, right? Like learn it and move on. That's just me. I don't know. I would ask you the same question, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think failure is a really good thing. I can't say I love it yet, but I'm getting there maybe. But I think I'm getting better. I'm getting much better at it. And certainly you're right. It does allow you to course correct, and we have to start talking about it, and we have to start, sharing when we have failed, because I think one of the best things that ever happened to me as a young veterinarian was my mentor sharing with, like, I think, when you make a medical mistake, you feel horrible, right? But if everybody stands around and says, "Oh, that's awful for you," that's terrible. But I think, my first mentor, my internship boss said the first time I made a medical mistake, he was like, I felt terrible, and we're trying to fix it, and we're trying to fix the mistake that had happened. And it wasn't like a terrible mistake, but he was like, do you think that I've ever killed a horse by accident? Do you think that I've ever had anything bad happen to me? And I was like, I don't know. What can you think right now? And it's just wonderful to hear him share his failures too, and also to when he failed, to model what the right behavior is, and how to improve from that. And I feel like that was such a wonderful gift for someone to give, like a younger veterinarian. And I think I've tried to carry that forward, because I think it is important to share a little bit when you failed, and also empathize with others and show them and model the right behavior when you do fail again, and so that you're not hiding it, and you're not, you're not pretending it never happened and not learning from it.
Couldn't agree more. Don't have a lot to add other than it's a hard thing when also that failure is a business piece as well too, because there's money, time, people, input. There's a lot that's involved in that. And yeah, in young vets, it can scar them for life, which it doesn't need to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, even old vets like us.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do want to talk specifically about some of the cool things that you guys have done. So we've talked a little bit about, so Jonathan, I don't think you mentioned you did an MBA, correct?
I did not. No, I do not have an MBA. No, it has been learning on the fly and some extra courses along the way. One of my bosses, it was great because I've spoken about getting an MBA multiple times. He's like, Jonathan, you are learning an MBA on the spot. He had his MBA. Mm-hmm. He's going, the theory that I learned in school is what you're actually learning in real life right now. And yeah, though I've never taken an MBA, I have to trust those that have in that comment.
Yeah.
And I get to sit at the same table as lots of MBAs and be at the same conversation. And it's enjoyable from a business side. But that, again, is the interest and the time that I've spent to get there. Yep.
I think you probably, I don't know if you feel this way, but so the circles that I work in often have, I sit at the table with lots of people with PhDs, right? And I don't have a PhD, and I'm probably not going to get a PhD. So I think about that, but then I think of all the other, so you can be intimidated by that, I think, or you can realize that you bring a lot of other gifts because your brain probably works completely differently, or you have different experiences and different gifts to offer. So I don't know how you feel about that, or if you kind of feel the same way, or if you have different experiences.
Completely. As late as last week, there's some financial modeling that we were working on, and I was wishing, man, I wish I had some advanced training. Oh, if only I had an MBA in that. And then, no, I can go on to Udemy. I can go on to any online course from MIT that's, open, and go learn it. So again, that's imperative on me. That doesn't depend on me having an MBA. That depends on me taking the time to go learn it.
Mm-hmm.
This world's changing. Yeah, you don't need a PhD or an MBA behind your name. It does help, without a doubt, but you don't need that to be successful.
And I think that's really true.
And I think, the way the world works now, and with relationships, if it's something you want, like if you have a burning desire to be a PhD in something, by all means, you should go do it. Yeah. But if you don't, and you have this vision or this business you're creating, and you absolutely need someone with a PhD or an MBA, build that relationship with someone, partner with them in whatever capacity that looks like, and more gets done, bringing your different skill sets together. It doesn't make sense having 5 people with all the same credentials sitting around the table.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think too, like so it's interesting how as the world is changing and how we're looking at, and as vets, we can learn, as you say, we can learn just about anything because we're smart individuals. They don't let you in if you're dumb. So like you're going to be able to figure out just about any scenario if you can work your way around it. And then as you build your network of people, you can call upon just about anybody to get the information that you need.
That's correct. And then don't burn bridges, because at some point, because the world is so small, you're going to be talking with those individuals again. Yeah.
That is also true. Now, Michael, to go back to when you started moving into real estate, can you tell me about, maybe your first steps, or how you might have got curious, or how you knew that was something you wanted to pursue, and then some of the first things that you might have done to move yourself forward in that area?
Okay. So yeah, I won't spend too long on all the stories behind it, but really real estate is just the tool, right? Like what I really wanted to accomplish was lifestyle freedom, right? And there's many different ways you can accomplish that. And as I was looking at real estate, at the same time, I was actually considering buying a veterinary clinic. So this is 2012, and it was literally down to time to make an offer on the veterinary clinic, or am I buying this rental property? And at the time in 2012, the rental property was just a better decision for my life. Like at that stage in my life, doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Like you could go either direction and have it work out great. But for me, what it was wanting to accomplish that growing passive income, because I knew that I didn't want to exchange time for money for 30 years, right? I had seen that. I'd seen other veterinarians that have done that and have it not work out so well. And I just didn't want to do that. So I put that real estate component in place to solve that problem. And then as it kept sort of working out well for me, we just did it repeatedly to get it to the point where like a paycheck becomes optional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome. Cool. I think we could probably do a whole episode on that. That would be pretty neat. And I know you recently did an interview with the Vet Financial Summit. So if people haven't seen that, that's a really good place to check out. I think you went into quite a bit more detail there.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I love chatting about that. So people can reach out anytime, like any veterinarians, if they want to chat real estate stuff. I love that stuff.
And if you look at Mike's core values and what he wanted to do and what he's been thinking the last 3 years, even before we started the Veterinary Project podcast, and the project itself, it was about bringing financial awareness to veterinarians and literacy, and then therefore hopefully financial freedom, because we don't have the same backstops that, you know, our federal friends do, and some others that have pensions, etc. So what are we going to do in 30 years when we all have to retire or sooner, and ensure that we have stability and sooner to the vision that Mike talks about? It's a big deal.
Yeah, these are all good. These are all excellent points. Now, I do wonder, what resources would you recommend to people if they were looking to maybe follow the path that you had, or things that you found incredibly useful?
Is that for Mike, or is that for myself, or both?
Oh, both of you. I need to know from both of you.
I'll be quick. I think for myself, it's been relationships and taking those next steps and learning then as we go and continuing to evolve from there, whether it's been outside of the veterinary world and real estate and finance and investments, etc., into, you know, my roles in operations and leadership within the veterinary industry. Yeah. Relationships and learning and being open to change.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Really the pretty simple formula.
For me, I would say, I guess it's not a specific resource, but there's so many inside of it, is personal development. So a mistake I made was at like becoming a veterinarian, you're so focused on your veterinary skills. And then when I started investing in real estate, I was so focused on, you know, technical real estate investing knowledge. And I kind of forgot to work on myself, right? Like all of the personal development, like confidence stuff that's under the scene and fundamental to whatever you do in life. So that would be the resources that I would focus on for veterinarians, because your veterinary skills and your veterinary career is going to build on top of the foundation that you place with your personal development. And inside of that, specifically mastermind groups. So my life completely changed. I have a Monday night group. I don't know, we've been meeting for years, every single Monday night for over an hour. And we dive into everything. Like I know those guys better than I know anyone else in the world. And they know everything about me. And it's supportive and encouraging, but we also challenge each other, right? Like call each other out. If you're doing something that's not in alignment with your core values and your vision, sometimes you can't see, you know, you're too close to it and you need that another set of eyeballs to help you out. So a mastermind group would be sort of a tactical, like put into action immediately step for everyone.
Yeah, I like that. Now, it seems like everybody and their brother is saying that they have a mastermind these days. So how do you know if it's legit or if it's bogus?
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
I think you have to experience it. Now, I mean, now we can go, oh man, we can go on some tangents here, because I see the same thing online. You know, everyone is an expert in everything, and they just happen to have a course for sale. So they want to, like, you know, they're prettying it up for you to get, you know, to sort of, not to lure people in isn't the right word, but to try to sell it. And it's like, you know, when you're in your mastermind group, like if those people in there are not supporting you, you know how some people, they want you to do well, but just not better than them, right? There should be none of that. It should be full on playing full out, like support, encourage, challenge. I guess you have to be in there, because to be honest, this mastermind group is not my first, right? I was in a few other ones and it's like, this isn't really working. It's not the vibe for me. So trial and error is what it was for me.
Yeah.
Not buying into hype. I think there's so much hype out there, and just picking the latest and greatest can be anybody and everyone's downfall. And Mike, perseverance, right? Sticking with it and seeing if those in your mastermind are also persevering through the challenging parts.
And I think your mastermind has to be full of people that are doing or have done what you want to do, right? Like that's the classic, you're the average of the 5 people. Well, if no one in your mastermind has the same goals as you, or if they haven't accomplished what you're trying to do, then you need to find different, like, mentors or mastermind people to hang out with.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Yeah, I'm always like a little bit of a background lurker. I like to get a lot of background information before I make a decision about, like, so I always hang out on people's social media and figure out what they're putting out there, if it seems legit or not. But it can be confusing. It can be hard to find sometimes. So try a few things, see if it's your vibe, see if it's not. Be quick to leave if it isn't, and go somewhere else. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, and like you have to. When you're choosing it, you have to be a little bit selfish. Sometimes we're really polite and we don't want to hurt people's feelings to say, this isn't for me. But if it's a big commitment, like this is your life you're talking about, or your career, or whatever the focus is of this mastermind group. So I think it's fine to stand up for yourself and say, if something's not working, it's time to move on.
Yeah, that's great. That's probably true with jobs too.
Yeah.
Great. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to share with the DVM Project group, or any advice that you think would be really crucial for them for success in 2021?
I think there's a lot of negativity out there. I think it's way easier to focus on what's going wrong as compared to what's going right. And I think there is a predominance for our industry to be doing that right now. And I think there's a lot of messaging to that. Our industry needs a lot of help. And I think I go out there a little bit and say, hey, we also have a lot of positives happening. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of skills out there. We're allowed to focus on that. We don't just have to focus on the negative people. We don't all just have to talk about everything that's bad. Let's look at what's good out there and let's continue to change and evolve to the positive. Is that going to get us further, or should we just continue to talk about the shit? Yeah, and I get in trouble that way because, I watch it on social media. I listen to podcasts. I see what's going on in our groups that, I'm involved with, and I go, guys, this is BS. Like, at some point we got to quit talking about the bullshit and the bad, and let's go talk about what we can do, what we do have the power to influence, and go do it. Like, quit talking. That, I think, if I'm going to get in trouble for something, it'll probably be for that.
I love when Johnny gets riled up about this, because I totally agree. So I'm not poo-pooing it. You're so passionate about it, but you are correct. Like, people focus too much on the negative. Sure, if something's not working, acknowledge it, but then move on, figure out how to solve the problem, look at the positives, and take that and run with it.
Yeah. I think that's really true. Yeah. And I mean, give space to grieve, like, the crappy stuff that's happened and those kind of things, and consult with the right people and talk to them. And, I acknowledge that, yeah, this is garbage. Like, this year hasn't been the best year, but it doesn't mean that there haven't been some really cool things that have come out of it. Like, there's been I just see so many people collaborating and so many cool trends that are happening out there that are just, I don't know, some of the things that didn't work before are maybe going to be so much better now, and so much easier now that we've tried different things that everybody thought that'll never work because of this silly reason that we had to all get over.
This is not to take away from, the suffering and the people that have died this year and everything that has occurred and is still occurring. And, we don't have an end in sight yet. My wife recently showed me a list of new companies that were formed in the 2000 and 2008 financial crisis down in the States. And we were lucky in Canada. It was not as bad up here than it was down there. We still had some rough patches, but there were some amazing tech companies, amazing new companies that came out as a result of that. What's going to happen from 2020? Who else is out there not listening to just the negative and actually doing things right now that is going to influence the world over the coming decade? I'm looking forward to seeing those emerge.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. What else? What cool things are we that we never would have ever even thought possible before? Just kind of a neat way to look at it.
I always joke with my team. I was trying to get my management team to be able to use Zoom or a video call a year and a half ago. That's only a year and a half ago. And we were failing miserably. Look at where we are now.
Yeah. Right? I know. Even granddads and grandmas are like, yeah, I can use Zoom. My mom sent me a link the other day about how to look good on Zoom. She tried it out. She thought it was a good idea for me to know. Thanks, Mom.
That's awesome.
Looking after you, Mel. I'm just looking after you, Melanie.
I know. She's always looking after you. She just doesn't want me to look like I have a double chin. It's just so kind of her.
That's fantastic.
That really is.
Oh, dear. Okay. So, I'm gonna edit this little part out, but I'm gonna conclude, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay. All right, so thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and for coming out or coming to your living room or your office on a Saturday night at 8:30. It's fantastic to have you, and really great information. Where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you?
Everywhere. Oh, for me, social media, probably Instagram. I think my handle's Bugg.DVM, not even sure, or through our podcast, the Veterinary Project. It's on Instagram, Facebook. Those would be where I'm most accessible.
And I would say the same. I would say LinkedIn. I get messages on there, Instagram, or the Veterinary Project.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, guys.